I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
They'd like to play the hard man when they're on it. It's not very pleasant when you're trying to manage a team. All you're looking for is a bit of civility and a bit of decency, but they just miss you like you know, you have nothing to do with the bloody occasion.
Will O'Callaghan is with us on the line, and Will, we'll get into the predictions in just a moment, but boy oh boy has chaos been reigning around the country this week. The Hurling Roadshow goes on one night out and madness ensues, complete chaos ensues. One of the Hurling Pod's dear members almost dies on a night out. Have a look at this. For people listening to us on the radio, I will describe this to you. So we've got CCTV footage of James Skehill falling off a chair. The chair buckled underneath him. Look at him on the ground, pint still intact, most importantly. What happened, Will? You were standing across from him, laughing at him as he was on the ground, making no attempt whatsoever to aid your co-presenter.
Yeah, well, the great part was James Skehill just kind of disappeared out of eye line. We're in the middle of a conversation, not sure exactly what point Skehill was trying to make, readjusts in his chair ever so slightly, and next thing, all 6'4" of pure muscle James Skehill is on the ground. But perhaps most impressively, and the main reason that I laughed, was that Skehill was actually saying he still had it because he was able to keep his pint entirely.
Can we play it one more time, just to appreciate, if that's possible, just to appreciate the handling of goalkeeper, of course, James Skehill here, holding onto his pint. So you can just see the back leg of that chair buckle.
Look at those instincts. And then straight away,
pint. Where's the pint?
Left
there
hand.
It is.
There is very much a careful man. There's a beverage here in the Big Lebowski about that, where he's like, I'm having a bad day here, but careful, there's a beverage here. He just held on to us. That's a hell of an effort.
You must be proud as a Galway man, Johnny.
Yeah.
You could still do a job this weekend potentially.
Absolutely. What was he hopeful of Galway's chances at all, Will?
Not really.
No.
It wasn't just because we were in Dolan's and Limerick when he was making the predictions on the roadshow. He actually started off way more bullish on Monday, and then within 48 hours when we get away for a roadshow, he's like, yeah, actually, I can't make any point that would see Galway actually win at the weekend. So I think he's accepted the fact that they would have to hurl completely out of their skins, and Limerick would also probably have to be down a few percent on their normal performance. And as Owen mentioned when you were going through the back of the papers, the scary part is that Limerick are getting 3 players back for this game, including a double hurler of the year in Keane Lynch. So that's a little bit helpful for John Kiley's side coming into it.
Was it a successful night otherwise in Dolan's, Will? Any crack after?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, as you can see there, I was obviously kind of middle of the after show party when James Skehill came off the chair. I think that was only around 1 a.m. So the fact that Paul Murphy was able to go to the management in the bar and say, hey lads, any chance we could get the CCTV, because we might be able to use this to actually use against Skehill on the pod next week. And the lads were more than happy to give us a running commentary in the background as he videotaped the whatever. I'm assuming it's on some kind of laptop that they were showing the CCTV footage. So they were there. Van Morrison, his band, I think, were across the way at the same time in Dolan. So
Van Morrison?
It was a bit of
Van the man himself.
Van the man himself was there. They were playing elsewhere in the city. How dare they go on a gig up against us at the same time? But we ended up in the same place. So yeah, we got a good few points. First time I'd actually met Skehill and Murphy in person, despite the fact we've been a podcast now for 19 weeks. So we Podge Collins with us, Jamie Wall, Colin Collins came across for a few points afterwards. Joe Quaid was just telling stories all night. There's a few people joking saying that you needed a stop clock to actually go on Quaid during the roadshow to stop him telling as many anecdotes as he did. And then we're afterwards going, well, you should hear the stories that can't go out for any legal reasons at 3 a.m. So yeah, absolutely fantastic. Poor old Valerie Wheeler was the one I felt for. She was up the host on Spin South West, I think about 40 minutes after we left the pub to start the show.
Oh my God.
So what a trooper to just kind of power through and do the show on fully charged yesterday morning.
So what's this? This is like a 5 a.m. job.
Yeah, it was around about then. I think it was around 4 o'clock when we go back to the hotel, at which point Skehill also used his rather large hands to take as many bottles of water out of the fridge in the hotel as he possibly could. I think he went walking into his room with about 10 bottles of water. And then the unusual part was I got up, went for a quick swim yesterday morning, decided to go for breakfast. I'm kind of on the time clock for this show at the moment, so I was up early enough around 7:30, 8 o'clock. I put into the WhatsApp to see what the lads were up to. Skehill was already back running in Galway at that point. So I think around 8:30, 9 o'clock yesterday morning. Admittedly, I believe he may well have got sick while going for his run, but he was going for a run at 9 a.m.
He got sick during his run. You've just outed him there.
I did out him slightly, yeah.
He went from really noble to kind of James Skehill throwing up after a few pints. and falling over.
I mean, it was going so well. Like he was like balancing pints the night before. Well, that sounds like an absolutely fantastic night. Johnny, we kind of missed out on that, it feels.
Yeah. Where did you go for your swim? There's a swim in the. There's a pool and all in the.
Yeah, I'd say probably went
literally in the hotel, Johnny. Yeah, it was like I wasn't going too far. I was ever so slightly hungover yesterday morning, so it was like I can manage to take the lift down into the leisure centre, the lift back up to get out of Limerick yesterday morning. But I'm a lot less tender this morning than I was yesterday, admittedly.
It's a great hangover cure. The old swim. Just into the water.
Yeah, especially after 2.5 hours sleep. That is good going. So that's clearly the hottest ticket in town. The next hurling roadshow sounds like the crack. Will, we do have 2 games to preview. We'll get up our graphics for the first game here. Our leaderboard. Aisling and Tommy in the lead on 79%, Will on 75%. I'm on 67%, which I don't necessarily buy. I think they need to be rechecked. And Adrian's at the bottom on 65%. So Adrian getting relegated.
Just get the objection in here, Owen, about the fact that Tommy has gone to 79%, because clearly whoever has been totting this up has given him a victory for Galway last week. That game was a draw.
That was a draw.
So that should be null and void, and he should be on about 76%.
I agree wholeheartedly with that sentiment. So, first game that we're looking ahead to this weekend is it going to be Limerick? It's going to be Kilkenny-Clare. Oh my God!
This is mad.
Okay, well this is bad.
This is mad.
This makes me panic now. We've all gone for the same outcome here, Will. Everybody's gone for Clare. Everybody's gone for Clare to beat Kilkenny. This just spells bad news. Brian Cody, first of all, you're very welcome. You're very welcome to OTB AM, Brian Cody. Thanks for tuning in. He will be leaving comments any moment.
Where's the printer there?
Why are you confident that Clare will win, Will?
I'm not a bit confident about Clare winning, but I think they will win. But I don't say that with any confidence whatsoever. Look, remember, this is Kilkenny under Cody, 2019. Limerick could not have been hotter of hot favourites. We brought it up so many times in Limerick the other night, the fact that they targeted that game, enjoyed the fact they were coming in slightly under the radar. This season, Kilkenny won a Leinster final at an absolute canter against Galway a few weeks ago, and they've had a 4-week break to be able to just concentrate on this Clare fixture. Clare were not particularly good in 57 minutes of their game against Wexford last time out. Okay, they were magnificent when the game was in the melting pot in the last 10 minutes or so, but there are plenty of question marks about that performance, plenty of question marks about the way that Clare were unable to defend high direct ball, which was coming into their full back line. And that is probably what Kilkenny will be targeting going into the game tomorrow. And lest we forget, Kilkenny have never lost to Clare in Championship under Brian Cody. 1997 was the last time that Clare beat Kilkenny in the Championship. The little caveat to go with that, though, is the last time that these two teams met in the Championship, Brian Lohan was on the field for Clare in his last ever game in 2006. So we have to go back that far. I think the one thing as well about Clare, like they've so little experience in Croke Park in recent seasons. They lifted the Lee McCarthy in 2013. They went back for a semi-final there in 2018, and they're the only 2 championship games that they've played in Croke Park. Like, for all of our love of Tony Kelly throughout the year, and he's the big favourite to win Hurler of the Year, he has played twice in Croke Park in 9 years. We'll see if he's able to light it up against Kilkenny this weekend. I think Mikey Butler is probably the player who's going to be detailed on him most likely in a man-marking job. I don't think it'll be like the Munster final where it was a zonal defence that Limerick were using primarily against Tony Kelly, or the last day where Rec went across onto Kelly for quite a bit of the game was reasonably effective. But then you see the moment where he's on his back like a turtle late in the game and is yet able to pop up and put the ball over the bar. So Kilkenny will obviously have to do a serious job on him. I don't think Clare are going to be as, let's say, half-baked as they looked against Wexford for the first hour or so of that game. I think they're going to come to the pitch and the intensity of the game a lot better against Kilkenny. I think this one by 1 or 2 points either side. I think Clare will come out on top. I'm expecting a repeat of the Munster final and when we get the All-Ireland final later this month. But this is really one where Kilkenny are ready to derail them all the same.
On his back like a turtle can only remind one of James Skehill, of course. There, I was like, I'm sure that come into other people's heads. But I think I like it. The Kilkenny support at this game, Will, I think it'll be interesting because like Kilkenny hurling folk down the years are so used to being in Croke Park, but I think they feel that they've been written off a bit here, and I think if this game's in the melting pot, the atmosphere, the Kilkenny people will be so behind them, and I just wonder mentally, do Clare even have the experience of the cauldron that this is going to be? Because Kilkenny people will fully believe with 10 minutes to go they're going to win this game.
Yeah, Kilkenny always believe they're going to win. That is the kind of great tradition that they've banked up over the years of being the most successful team of all time in hurling. That even when they hit low ebbs, like In 2018, I did not believe that they were going to beat Cork in a quarter-final. I did not believe they were going to beat Limerick in a semi-final. And the performance they put in 2019 was just absolutely remarkable. And a lot of the same agents are still around for Kilkenny right now. And obviously, like, you've got Cody's consistency over the last 2+ decades on top of that. Clare will probably outnumber the Kilkenny support, Johnny, I would think.
Yeah,
like, Clare have travelled in massive numbers this year. They created an unbelievable atmosphere at the Munster final against Limerick. I think if you're looking psychologically about what the Clare players will have taken from this season so far, is the fact they've been level on 3 occasions at 70 minutes with Limerick, who are the overwhelming favourites to win the All-Ireland Championship and very possibly the best team of their generation. Definitely the best team, I would say, this Limerick team, since Cody's team of the late 00s. Like, and they were probably the best hurling team of all time. So,
and by contrast, I think the Galway support will say from 2011 onwards up to now will be massive Galway followings at the semi-finals that they've been at and the finals. I don't think it's going to be there this year. That's just my hunch.
And also
it's an expensive year for them, John.
Exactly.
Yeah, I probably think that's going to be the case. Like, I mean, they would generally say that hurling would get the better support from Galway.
Yeah, well, that's kind of a generational thing. Like, it became the Galway football, the love of Galway football definitely abated in some people over the last few years with the defensive style of play, and Galway just weren't very good.
They'll be back for the semi-final, no question about it.
Yeah, they'll be back this year, but the hurlers did take over.
Yeah. The second game is Limerick against Galway, and no surprises there. Everybody is going for Limerick. What concerns you most about this prediction, Will? Is there anything that concerns you, or are you fully sure that this result will materialise?
Not particularly concerned. I think I'd agree with Joe Quaid's summation on stage. You can watch the prediction section back on our YouTube and Off the Ball if you want to see the thoughts of Joe and Jamie Wall and Podge Collins and the lads from the other night. Is that, like, this really feels like it's both Limerick's game to lose and Limerick's championship to lose, because any question marks that we had about Limerick earlier in the season, whether that be suspensions, whether that be injuries, like, there's not too many teams who could have lost their absolute star player and the guy who's so central to how they play in Keane Lynch in the second round of championship, and they still go on to reel off a provincial without facing too many issues. Like, they were still able to go toe-to-toe with an informed Clare team in that Munster final, and they had that little bit of extra depth in extra time to win in Munster. They've had a break. That break has been good for Limerick because they've won so much in recent years, where they've only lost 5 championship games in the John Kiley regime, and only 2 of them have been knockout hurling, both of them against Kilkenny. So they don't lose very often in championships. So for them, I think getting the extra time to get Casey and Lynch particularly in contention to come in this weekend. The question mark is whether Lynch comes directly back into the team. I think he will, and all the feelings seem to be in Limerick that he has enough training in his legs over the last few weeks to just slot right back into the side. So then on top of all the excellent play they've had and players stepping up like Flanagan the last day with 8 points, Diarmaid Byrnes with his scoring this year, I think Galan has looked better this year than he looked last year. He's looked absolutely lethal in front of goal. And then you add in the guy who pulls all the strings in Keane Lynch. You're taking out Cathal O'Neill, which gives a remarkable option to come in from the bench. There's just something about that Limerick system that just keeps ticking over. And I think they're a better team now than when they lost that championship game 3 years ago. I think they're a much more polished team. They've got 3 more years of experience in them. They've won the last 2 close games that they played against Galway, which were pretty tight. I heard you guys talking about earlier in 2020 where the injuries to Mannion and Canning were pretty crucial in that semi-final in the COVID year. Because Galway had a decent run on them. And Galway played really well, as we recall, in what we may as well call the first quarter before the water break came in. And then Kinnerk and his whiteboard came out at that stage. And Limerick seemed to blitz them in what we'll call the second quarter. And Limerick had a little bit too much in the second half. And in 2018, that was an All-Ireland final where everyone in Limerick was clenching at the end of the game while Joe Canning was sending in a late free. And they just about managed to get that ball clear and get over the line to win their first All-Ireland title since the 1970s. So the last 2 fixtures between Galway and Limerick have been very tight. I'm just not so sure where Galway are at.
Well, you see, if you look at the forwards, like if Conor Whelan was half shackled against Kilkenny and then just Galway just faded out of the game, maybe Cathal Mannion has to have a massive day as well. The aforementioned Cathal Mannion, maybe we've some sort of chance. For me, Will, it looks like we've too many 6 or 7 out of 10 players that you just can't bank on performing at this level.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I mean, like that Limerick defence, particularly like all-stars across the board effectively, are not going to create or allow as much space to be created for Galway as Cork maybe afforded them at different stages during the game. And bear in mind as well, we were watching the game on TV together that day. Like the freak goal starts everything off from Grealish which gives Galway an absolutely perfect start in the game. And Cork could be disappointed with the concession of that second goal too. Like, to beat Limerick, given that Limerick are going to consistently hit somewhere between 28 and 32 points, you can set your watch to that over the last 5-6 years. Galway are probably going to have to, I think, bang in 2 or 3 goals. So you're going to probably have a generational performance from Conor Whelan, maybe Conor Cooney stepping up as well. As you say, Mannion, who I think is a magnificent hurler, will have to really come into it. But you're doing that against such a good Limerick defence, where also Galway cannot afford to be as leaky as they were against Cork. Like, Éanna Murphy had an incredible game, probably his best performance for Galway that day, because he was remarkably busy. Cork had so many goal chances. They hit so many wides in the first half too. Limerick will not allow you away with that. So I think if Galway are to have any chance, Limerick are going to have to be off it a little bit. And Limerick haven't been off it a whole lot in the last 5-6 years.
Will, very quickly before we wrap, will Offaly get the job done in the minors?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't watched both semi-finals, and I rewatched the game between Tipperary and Galway last week because it was just such a good game before we did the hurling pod. It was very different to the game that Offaly played against Clare, which was a little bit more defensive, and Offaly are actually very well structured at the back. I don't think they will allow Tipperary to get as many chances to score, like 320 like they did against Galway in the second of the semi-finals in Limerick. But it's just going to be an unbelievable occasion, lads.
Yeah, how
Nolan
many
Park
are
is now
going to be in
sold
Nolan
out.
Park, actually?
So it's sold out as of last night.
Oh, wow.
So
That's
27,000 is
amazing.
gone. I have some concerns. Now, the GAA and Kilkenny GAA have been reassuring people that they've left 25% of the stands for under 16. So under 16s don't need tickets to go. But I would think, particularly when it comes to minors at 17 years of age, more than 1 in 4 people through the gate at the weekend are likely to be under 16. So I really hope that there's not a huge rush of people turning up without tickets, because you don't need them if you're under 16. And already the ground has been officially sold out at this point. So it's going to be a bumper crowd. I think it's very unlikely that everyone's going to be in the ground for 1:30 for this game between Tipperary and Offaly. And it was good fun actually coming back from Limerick yesterday and coming up through North Tipperary on the way home. I was in Rossgrey, and just give a shout out to Brendan's Bar in Rossgrey, because they've invited me across because I tweeted about them. They had half and half Offaly and Tipperary flags up, which I couldn't believe, inside the Tipperary border, and they had a crest for both counties on their front door. And I was thinking, what is this? Turns out that Brendan, the guy who runs the bar, he is from Offaly. He is married to a Tipperary woman. They're just inside the border in Rossgrey, in the middle of the town. And they said I have to come over for a pint after the final.
And it's
on
paid
Sunday.
off.
So
They just got a mention on OTB.
Yeah.
they did. I will duly oblige that, because I thought it was good fun. I had to do a double take when I came through, because once I got over the border and went through Coolderry and went into Burr to my parents' house at home, it was just like Offaly flags across the board. And again, we live on the Tipperary border. But in Rossgrey, there is a bit of an Offaly outpost, which is there inside the middle of the town, which is quite funny to see yesterday.
It is the Barack Obama Plaza Derby. Will, enjoy it. Hope
If Tipperary win, they can have Moneygall back.
They can have
And if we
Moneygall
win,
back.
We can have some parts that we like in Tipperary.
Good stuff. That's this week's Quick Picks.